Today's Bible study is looking into the book of Genesis, chapter 11. For this study, we'll be using the English Standard Version. This chapter is a major turning point in the Bible. The first half focuses on the Tower of Babel, a rebellion of prideful unity against God. The second half presents the genealogy that leads to Abram, the man through whom God will launch his redemptive plan for the world. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. This verse sets the context for the Tower of Babel. After the flood, humanity was united not just by location, but by a single language. This was not inherently sinful. Language was part of God's original design. But how they use this unity becomes the issue. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. The land of Shinar is the same region associated with Nimrod and Babylon. It is a place of early empire building and often represents opposition to God in biblical literature. That they migrated from the east may symbolize moving away from the place of God's blessing, as east is frequently linked with exile in Genesis. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. This describes human innovation and resourcefulness. There's nothing wrong with making bricks. But this technical advancement sets the stage for something deeper human pride, attempting to elevate itself apart from God. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." This verse reveals the true motive. Their goal was to glorify themselves, not God. Let us make a name for ourselves is the heart of pride. They also reject God's command from Genesis chapter 9 to fill the earth. They want to remain gathered in one place and build their own security apart from divine authority. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. This is irony. Man tries to build a tower to the heavens, but God still has to come down to see it. This underlines the absurdity of human pride in comparison to divine majesty. It also reminds us that God is personally attentive to human affairs. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." God is not intimidated by human power. Rather, he knows that their unified rebellion will only grow more dangerous if not interrupted. This is not about preventing progress, it's about restraining sin and preserving the future of humanity. "Come, let us go down," and they confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. This is divine judgment, but it's also mercy. By confusing their language, God halts their rebellion and forces them to scatter. The phrase "let us go down" may reflect the divine counsel or serve as a plural of majesty. It echoes the letters of creation, showing God's power over human plans. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. This verse shows that God's will is ultimately fulfilled. They refused to spread out, so God made them spread. Their plan failed because they left God out of it. The city becomes a monument to human failure. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. The name Babel sounds like the Hebrew word for confused. It also becomes the root of Babylon, which throughout the Bible represents human pride, false religion, and opposition to God. Babel is more than a tower. It is a symbol of rebellion. Now we transition to the second half of Genesis 11, which returns to genealogy. These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. This genealogy traces the line from Shem to Abram. It is shorter and more focused than Genesis 10, highlighting specific people in the Messianic line. This is not just a record of names, it is God's preservation of his promise. And Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years and had other sons and daughters. The long lifespans continue for a few more generations, but begin to decline. This may be part of the post-flood environmental changes or divine intention to shorten human life. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. These verses continue the pattern, emphasizing generational continuity. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he fathered Eber. Eber is significant because the term Hebrew likely comes from his name. His line leads directly to Abram and eventually to Israel. When Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. Peleg's name means division, and the text earlier noted that in his days the earth was divided. This could refer to the events of Babel or a broader dispersion. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu. The genealogy continues with brief structured entries, maintaining the flow down to the most important figure in the list, Terah. When Reu had lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. When Serug had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah. When Terah had lived 70 years, he fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now we reach the most significant figure, Abram. The rest of Genesis will focus on him and his descendants. The introduction of his family here marks the turning point from primeval history to patriarchal history. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. This verse introduces the extended family that will play key roles in the story of Abraham, including Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah, in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. This historical detail shows that Abram's family originally came from southern Mesopotamia. Ur was a major city and center of culture and idolatry. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah. This marks the beginning of the Abram and Sarai narrative. Now Sarai was barren. She had no child. This verse sets up the tension that will define much of Abram's story. God promises descendants, but Sarai is barren. This highlights that God's plan will require supernatural intervention. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law. And they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. This partial journey foreshadows God's later call to Abram to leave everything and go to a land he will show him. The destination was Canaan, but they stopped in Haran, possibly due to Terah's age or health. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. This closes out the chapter and prepares the way for the call of Abram in Genesis 12. Abram's journey is about to begin. Genesis chapter 11 is a powerful reminder that human pride can lead to confusion and division. But God's plan for redemption moves forward anyway. The Tower of Babel shows the futility of self-exaltation, while the genealogy leads us to Abram, a man called to trust God rather than build his own name. If you enjoyed this Bible study, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what you think of this Bible